Oh, yes. I'm just looking at this monomania, a form of mental illness in which someone focuses on just one irrational idea, or group of ideas. Yeah. The monomaniac may be sane and rational in other matters. Oh, then there's that mute question, a hypothetical question, a question that cannot be answered by referring to established rights and facts. Yes. And then there's that moonlighting. Oh, the holding of a second job by a public employee who is supposed to work full time at his public job. Oh. And then there's the moral coercion, exerting extreme pressure upon someone to do or not do something, excessive persuasion. Now, moral certainty, conviction or degree of certainty sufficiently strong to justify a conclusion, such as moral certainty that an accused is guilty. Moral certainty is somewhat less than absolute certainty, although it may be enough to convince someone to reach a firm conclusion. Yes. Now, this form of mental illness in the judiciaries of the United States, having emailed those in law enforcement, judges, Supreme Court judges, looks like we have a little monomania going on in the United States where if you weren't sitting on the bench, you'd seem perfectly normal. But the truth is, you completely disregard 250 years of legislation. Oh. Now, a lot of books have been written about this whole issue of due process and fraud on the court and fraud of corporations. And could you get me all the state law libraries in every state of the United States where the Supreme Courts and the legislatures and the executive branch of the state said, no, we need to have a state law library for all of those in the profession of being officers of the courts, where they can go to the state law library, they can get themselves a book about the importance of making sure that you don't use forgeries. Yes. That you don't have fraud. Oh, that you don't take custody of a person's kids without any due process at all. Oh, now if I look through the actual employees of the last 40 years of every state law library, yes, and then the Library of Congress's work that Congress has done for 250, yes, and then all those ABA recognized law schools that have law libraries that have books that have been written about why it is that you have to give a person notice and opportunity to be heard before you say that they have a monomania, that the guy needs mental health evaluation and treatment if recommended. What I thought I'd do is I'd employ some of these legal researchers, kind of like a paralegal. Yes. And I'd say, well, why don't we go to the law library and you get me the tens of thousands of books that have been written in each and every state of the United States. Then I'll go to the Library of Congress and I'll look at each of the amendments that have been passed, and of course that Bill of Rights, the Fifth Amendment, and I'll bring in 1,000,000 fucking books that have been written about why it is you can't issue court orders without any notice or opportunity to be heard. Now, it seems like the state just doesn't get the idea of the lawsuit, but a lot of times when you're working with a jury that just doesn't understand this concept of the requirements of the law, yes, I'm thinking if I brought 1,000,000 books into every fucking lawsuit, they might understand exactly what he's saying. Now, you have a monomania in the judiciary where you think the question is mute because of solus marcal. Chow, chow, chow. But I would say that I have 250 years of documents and books that have been written about this.